Sorcha, goodí an chránú fásnéise seo an Scoil náisiúnta phobal I gcomharla le bord Oideachais agus a Luna Kerry. You're very welcome, and thank you for joining us for this webinar and information session, which has been organised in response to requests for information we've received about the ETB patronage model of community national schools, known as CNS for short. Over the past while, teachers, principals, and others in Kerry have expressed a wish to understand in more detail how this model works in the county, and in particular, the role of the patron Kerry ETB. This presentation will be relatively compact, about 45 minutes or so, and this session is being recorded and will be available afterwards on the Kerry ETB website. My name is John Herlihy. I work with Kerry ETB, and just to run through the schedule for the next 45 minutes or so. Tonight's information session will be arranged into three sections. First, a short presentation on the Community National School model by Con Moynihan of Kerry ETB. Then we will have a conversation with a number of guest panelists who are familiar with the Kerry ETB Community National School model. You'll hear from principals, teachers, and a parent as well. And finally, we'll move to a questions and answers session with Padraig and Anne O'Dwyer. Now, Padraig is a former Department Inspector of Primary Schools. He's also chair of the Board of Management in the three community national schools here in Kerry, while Anne O'Dwyer is our Director of Schools here at Kerry ETB. Just some brief housekeeping about questions before we start. If you have a question as you listen to the presentation or as we go through it, I'd invite you to use the question and answer function, which is on screen at the bottom. Usually it's the Q&A button. Pop your question in there, and you can do it anonymously if you wish. But if you'd like us to follow up with you afterwards, if we don't get to the question or if you want more detail, leave your contact details, name, or telephone number, and we'll certainly do that if we don't get around to all the questions this evening. And of course, Con will be following up with all of the questions after this webinar. Okay, so let's start. First, let's hear from Con Moynihan of Kerry ETB. Con is now going to provide us with an overview of the Community National School model.
Fáiltearóibh, tá míad fíormhaíoch gohfuil si bhí ann tacht chun an sesiún óla seo faoi Scoil náisiúnta phobal atá chur a láthair ag bord Oideachais agus a Luna Kerry. Welcome everybody. Community national schools are Ireland's newest patronage model in primary education. Known as CNSs for short, community national schools are state-run, multi-denominational, co-educational primary schools. They are underpinned by the core values of excellence in education, care, equality, community and respect. Irish society has become more diverse, and the community national school patronage model was established by the state to cater for increasing diversity. Community national schools are under the patronage of education and training boards, which are public bodies. Because of this, community national schools are Ireland's only state-run and state-funded primary schools. Community national schools are multi-denominational schools. This means that in a community national school, the full range of religious beliefs in the school community are welcomed and provided for in an inclusive way. Community national schools are concerned with developing relationships that are respectful and appreciative of different belief systems. Community national schools aim to achieve excellence in all aspects of teaching and learning. Like all primary schools, CNSs teach the primary school curriculum. In order to address a multi-belief and values education, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment developed Goodness Me, Goodness You, or GMGY for short, as the patron's curriculum for community national schools. GMGY aims to increase children's sense of identity and belonging to their family, school, local community and wider world. GMGY is taught for 2.5 hours each week through explicit and integrated lessons. It has 4 strands. Strand 1, My Stories. The My Story strand is about children developing a positive sense of who they are and giving them an understanding that they are valued and respected as part of a family, school and community. Relationships with family members, other adults and children, and respect for difference play a key role in building their identities. Strand 2, Thinking Time. This strand is grounded in the philosophy of children approach and seeks to develop children's thinking and debating skills and to question things with a critical eye. It encourages children to develop a curious mind and an awareness of others. Strand 3, We are a community national school. In this strand, a spirit of inclusion, equality and fairness is developed. All celebrations and milestones are celebrated, including religious milestones. You will hear more on this later from a teacher and parent. Strand 4, Beliefs and Religions. This strand encourages interbelief dialogue and the sharing of personal belief experiences, both religious and secular. Listening to other perspectives is key here. Rites and ceremonies, special journeys, special places, and celebrations are all acknowledged. Community national schools provide a caring environment that effectively promotes the welfare of all its members. The school provides a safe physical and social environment that facilitates children's engagement in positive learning experiences and also reinforce a sense of belonging to the school, community, and wider society. As schools which value and promote equality, community national schools strive to provide all students with equal opportunities to engage with the curriculum and school life. In all aspects of school life, members of the school community are treated equitably regardless of their race, gender, religious beliefs, age, family status, civil status, membership of the travelling community, sexual orientation, ability, or socioeconomic status. In the community national school, community includes pupils, staff, parents, guardians, and the local community. All members of the school community are provided with meaningful opportunities to have an active voice in the school. Finally, community national schools promotes a respectful environment for all members of the school community. Our schools promote a fully inclusive education that recognises the plurality of identities, beliefs, and values held by pupils, parents, and staff. As stated earlier, the establishment of community national schools is part of the state's response to increasing diversity in Irish society. There's a growing demand among parents, guardians for the state to provide more choice of school types other than single denominational models. There's also a growing demand in Ireland for publicly managed primary schools. Until now, national schools have been publicly funded but privately managed. The development of the community national school model answers both demands and represents a very exciting and welcome evolution in Irish education. The first community national school, Scoil CNS, opened in Clonsilla in West Dublin in September 2008, and as you can see on the slide how things have progressed since then. There are currently 29 community national schools across Ireland, with the 30th community national school to open in Lyra Compán in North Kerry next September. Further community national schools will open in other locations across the country from September also. So since the establishment of the community national school model in 2007 and the opening of the first CNS in Dublin in 2008, the model has continued to grow. Community national schools open as a result of one of two processes: the establishment of a new school in areas of population growth, or the transfer of school patronage where there is demand for change to a multi-denominational school. Currently, 14 of the 29 schools opened as new schools in areas of demographic growth, while 15 of the 29 have transferred patronage to the local education and training boards to become community national schools. We expect to see a growth of the community national school model into the future, as the current programme for government aims to have 400 multi-denominational primary schools in Ireland by 2030. ETBs are the largest provider of multi-denominational education in Ireland and are the patrons of community national schools. ETBs are state bodies committed to lifelong learning with a reputation for inclusive, innovative and quality education. The school principal and teachers in a community national school have time to concentrate on teaching, learning and supporting students, as many of the administrative burdens are shouldered by the local ETB. These include patronage and ethos support from ETB Ireland and Kerry ETB's ethos coordinator, governance support in complying with all relevant circulars and legislation, financial planning, financial advice. We prepare monthly financial reports for the school boards of management and support schools to prepare their annual budget. In relation to human resources, while the principal will always shortlist and sit on all interview boards, the HR department in Kerry ETB manage the recruitment process. The HR department will also support the principal in dealing with any industrial relations issues if they arise, for example, parent complaints, grievances, bullying issues, etc. It should also be noted that the school secretary, caretaker and cleaning staff in a community national school are public sector employees and have all the terms and conditions of public sector employees, which include pay, leave, pension, etc. In the ETB sector, when a school needs to apply for building works such as minor works, summer works, emergency works, extensions, etc., the principal meets with the ETB building officer to discuss what is needed. The application is completed by the ETB building officer and the project is managed by the ETB Capital and Buildings Department. In relation to IT, the ETB provides ongoing network support, manages connectivity, Wi-Fi, etc., and monitors cybersecurity. The ETB will also procure and set up all devices after the principal identifies what is required. The ETB's Technologically Enhanced Learning Officer supports the principal and teacher to develop and implement their digital media strategy in line with the Department of Education priorities. The ETB also provides ongoing health and safety support and advice to schools and assists in addressing matters such as day-to-day health and safety concerns, plant and fire safety, security, COVID response, etc. The ETB Health and Safety Officer will support the principal to prepare the school's health and safety statement, carry out risk assessments where necessary, and also prepare for health and safety inspections. Kerry ETB have a Child Protection Oversight Committee which supports schools in complying with child protection legislation and requirements. The ETB provides induction for all new staff, designated liaison officers and deputy designated liaison officers, and ongoing training and updates for management and staff on child protection matters, as well as supporting schools to prepare for child protection inspections. And finally, CNS principals also have the added bonus of being part of a principals team in Kerry ETB and meet once per term to discuss and address issues and share policies and share best practice. The three community national schools in County Kerry are 2 Mile Community National School Killarney, Tahilla Community National School in the Kenmare area, and in the Glenbann a Gaeltacht area, there is the first Gaeltacht CNS school in Ireland, Scoil and Ghleanna, Scoil Náisiúnta Phobal. As I mentioned earlier, a 4th national school in Lara Compán in North Kerry will be joining the CNS family in September. Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. If you would like to learn more about community national schools, please read the information guides on the links provided. They're also available at cns.ie. If you feel that your school community would be interested in becoming a community national school, we would be happy to meet with you to explain the process and the step-by-step approach. In the light of the positive experience in the 3 community national schools in Kerry, we're very pleased to share our insights and knowledge with you all here this evening on this important aspect of educational provision. You can also make direct contact with me at Kerry ETB at my email address and phone number, which you can see on the slide and which will be circulated to all present along with the slides later. So thank you again for joining us here this evening, and I will now hand you back to John.
Thank you, Con, for that clear and very useful overview of the Community National Schools model. And we'll remind our attendees tonight of your contact details before we finish this evening's information session. Good few questions already coming in, and just to remind you to write in your question to the Q&A function on the screen, and we'll add it to the list that we already have, and we'll endeavour to get through them all before we finish this session. Now let's run through the questions we have to date, and let's have a conversation or classroom chat with a number of teaching professionals who are actively immersed in the delivery of the Community National School concept here in Kerry. So collectively, we'll say hello and welcome to our 3 principals. Catherine Barry joins us from 2 Mile School in Killarney, that's 2 Mile Community National School. Sorcha Chatháin joins us from Scoil and Ghleanna, CNS in Ballinskelligs, and Moira de Cogan from Tahilla Community National School, as Con just mentioned, which is in the Kenmare area. We have 2 teachers joining us tonight as well, Sinead Connolly from Tahilla and Pauline McCarthy from 2 Mile School. And we're very pleased as well to be joined on our panel by one parent from South Kerry, from Scoil and Ghleanna, to Julianne McGillicuddy, and we will work our way around to each of those over the next couple of minutes. Can I just remind our panelists who have joined us to switch on your cameras, please, so we can see you when you are speaking, and also just to make sure as well at this point that your microphone is live so that we can hear you when we pose a question to you. Okay, let's begin and straight into the questions. This is one, I think, Catherine Barry, principal of 2 Mile CNS in Killarney. I think I'm going to pose this to you, Catherine, and good evening to you.
Hi, John.
What are the practical everyday advantages to you as a principal at a community national school?
Well, I suppose the first word that springs to mind when you put that question to me really is support. And, you know, as we saw there from the presentation, there's a wide range of supports that's provided by Kerry Education and Training Board to me as principal, to the staff, parents, children, and everyone. And as any principal who's watching tonight will know, we are trained teachers, that's our area of expertise, but we're asked to do a whole lot of other things besides every day, you know, and all of those supports that were listed out there in terms of administration, finance, buildings, maintenance, health and safety, IT, you know, I can say that we come up against those almost every day, or at least once a week. And for me, the crucial aspect is that I'm not on my own dealing with those issues. There's always somebody I can phone. You know, if it's buildings, there's a name there, there's a phone number, I can ring them. You know, there are people in head office that are working away in the background. They're the experts, and I can consult them as need be. Just to give two examples of that, like we had a refurbishment here in the school in 2019, and every aspect of that from start to finish was dealt with by Kerry Education and Training Board. I didn't have to do anything, you know, from applying for grants to the works and everything that goes with it. I just walked out the door here and handed over the keys. So that was great. In terms of IT support, you know, again, we're not experts in IT, but it's great to have experts there, both in terms of the devices and also for advice in teaching and learning. You know, it's a very important part of our job. I suppose it's important as well that we're part of a network. Like I work very closely with the principals here in Kerry, and I'm also a member of that wider network there of the nearly 30 now community national schools around Ireland. And that's a great source of peer support and training for things like ethos and the Goodness Me, Goodness You curriculum. And I suppose I'll give the last word to the Board of Management supports. I mean, it's, as well as being principal, I'm secretary to the Board of Management. And, you know, since I came into this job, the support that Kerry ETB give us as a board and to me as secretary is second to none, really. So
that's really well put across and very practical as well, which was the question, the practical everyday advantages that you have the support, you have those economies of scale as well, don't you, Catherine? You know, we are part of a bigger organization. So everything with a bigger organization sometimes is easier because they're dealing very much in silos of different things, buildings, compliance, health and safety, and all those customized supports are all there. Thank you for that. I've one additional question, Catherine, if you don't mind, which has just come in. And this is, you mentioned the Board of Management there. I suppose linked to that will be the Parents' Councils. And the question is, how are CNS Parents' Councils constituted? That's the first part. How are they constituted? And then how do they operate? So a two-parter there for you, Catherine, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, I suppose the easy answer is that it's similar really to any other school. Do you know, I mean, in our case, from the beginning, we had a very interested and committed group of parents. I think, you know, parents who make a choice to come to a school that's a little bit different, you tend to find that they are very committed. So we had a very strong parents association from the start, and they organised themselves formally with a chairperson and a secretary. And then, you know, as time went on, that grew, and other people joined, and they work closely with the National Parents Council as well. Just recently, in November, they had training with the National Parents Council. So it's just really the same as it would be in another school. You know, like you have, I suppose, people who are interested and willing to come forward, and they lead it, and others follow. So we're lucky, I suppose, in community national schools that, again, that people are very committed, and we have a huge turnout really to our parents' meetings.
That's really interesting. And I suppose it is, as you mentioned, really exciting to be part of something new. This is very much a new movement that it's at its beginning. So it's only going to grow and develop. Catherine, thank you for that. And there may be other questions for you as we move along, but thank you for your time on those. We're going to go from Killarney and we're going to move south to Ballinskelligs to Scoil and Ghleanna. Sorcha ní Chatháin is on the panel as well this evening. Good evening, Sorcha.
Hi, John.
Now, different environment down there, and you know, I've often passed the school on my bike in better weather. It's a beautiful place down there, really gorgeous. But the challenge in more remote areas, obviously, is the wider geographical region that pupils have to travel from. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sorcha, you have some pupils traveling up to 30 kilometers a day to attend the school. So the bus is critical. The transport piece is critical. Could you explain to us how that works?
I will, of course, John. Thank you. Yeah, it's vital for us really that we have the school bus, and that due to the fact that we have Kerry ETB as our patron, the children can now travel from a wider area. So we have children who travel from Valentia Island, Portmagee, Coos-Crown, Carsavine, and because we are under a different patron to the other primary schools, they are then able to travel by bus. The bus is then facilitating that for them. And also the fact that we're a Gaeltacht school as well. So there's that second part of it as such. They may be able to travel to a Gaeltacht school, but the fact that we are now under the Kerry ETB as well, they can now bypass other schools essentially and have the facility of the bus to come out to us. As you say, John, we are pretty remote, and as beautiful as it is, we're quite far away. So the facility of the bus for us is a really important aspect, and it gives parents that choice now that they can actually access it. So we have 24 pupils, and 12 of those pupils actually come to us by bus, and they're collected in the morning at their various stops. And as you say, it travels about 30 kilometres. It's not that long of a drive. I think the longest a pupil is on the bus is perhaps 25 minutes, 30 minutes. So it's not that long either, but the distance is quite great. So it just gives parents that choice that if this is what they want for their children, that they can actually do it, and that it makes life a little bit easier for their parents so that they can ensure that their children travel to school safely by bus.
Yeah, it's funny when you think about it. 30 kilometers in a city or an urban setting is nothing really, but in a remote part of Ireland, no matter where you talk about, it does seem like a bigger challenge. But I will say the bus journey, I'll bet, to Scoil and Ghleanna is a very pretty bus journey in the morning, weather dependent, I'm sure. Linking back, and another question in here as well, and this links to the Gaeltacht area that you mentioned, and it sort of echoes what Catherine Barry was saying from 2 Mile CNS, is about the whole idea you're part of something bigger, but also the collaboration piece. Like, you're the only CNS in a Gaeltacht area in the entire country. So just let that sink in. You're the only CNS in a Gaeltacht area in Ireland, which is really quite a thing, isn't it? Would you like other Scoil na Gaeltachta to collaborate with?
Yeah, I'll approach it a couple of ways, perhaps. Yes, of course, it would be great to have other Scoil na Gaeltachta, Gael Scoilna, as they're a little bit different to say a Scoil Gaeltachta, as we're situated inside na Gaeltacht, just like a couple of focal around in Marialer, gur Scoil Gaeltachta mud, tamud fear rodulas, gur mud in tain Scoil Gaeltachta, fwy stúr an wardiachas agus Ghleanna. It's something that we're very proud of, that we are the only, thus far, community national school in the Gaeltacht in Ireland. So it is definitely a sense of pride for us to have that as our status. And we are now in the 5th year. It was very much an innovative choice for us to do that. It was a bold choice, dare I say, to take that leap of faith, to see would this be something that our community would welcome, and thankfully I can say that they have, and it's been very warmly received. We're very proud of that. We're a Gaeltacht school. We're situated in the most beautiful area of Iveragh. It's absolutely stunning, and our children now have, in my eyes, the best of both worlds, and that they can be fully immersed in their Gaeltacht area with their Gaeilge, that it's everyday language to our children inside here, that we live and breathe Gaeilge down here. So it's really important for us to have that status, and I suppose it kind of elevated us a little bit in conversation, perhaps, just to see that, oh, there's actually choice out there, and that there is something different, and that then the parents could then make their informed decisions for their children. So we are very proud of our status. We would love if there was another Gael Scoil or Gaeltacht school to join us. It would be great for collaboration and sharing of resources, and just to keep the teanga na Gaeilge bio, and to keep the conversation going, keep the language alive, keep it vibrant, and my colleagues Catherine and Maura, where we would regularly converse in Gaeilge, and I know they have a grá for the Tanga as well, so it's great. And Padraig O'Donovan, there's our chairperson as well on our board. Our last board we just finished up, and it was fantastic to be able to conduct some of our meetings in Gaeilge as well, and to converse to staff members inside in the Kerry ETB as well in Gaeilge. It's fantastic. So I would very much welcome anyone to get in touch with me, with the Kerry ETB. If you're a Gael school who are interested, you're very welcome to make contact with me. I would love to guide and support you.
Untag ar fad, gur míle bach Sorcha, and thank you so much for that overview, and also I suppose a snapshot of what is going on down there in the Ballinskelligs area. Thank you so much, Sorcha. Now we'll continue with some more of your questions, and we'll move to the Kinmare Sneem area, to Hilla Community National School. Moira de Chatháin is on our panel tonight. Moira, good evening and welcome to you.
Good evening, John.
The question for you is, well, it's a really, really big, integral part of all education, but it's what we would call the learner voice or the pupil's voice. But it's an integral part of the CNS model and concept. How was that lived out in practical terms across the school day?
That's a great question. Thanks, John. So I suppose there are a number of ways in which a pupil voice is lived out in a community national school. Just to be very clear that naturally the day-to-day management of the classroom and the school is for the most part teacher-led. However, there is also scope and space for ideas that the children might have that, you know, it's not all right, I'm the boss and you sit there now and listen. There's openness, and a lot of the children have great ideas. So if they have a great idea and it's worth considering, all the children in our schools know that they will get that moment or time or space to explore the idea and to see how we can implement it practically. Obviously, if it's an idea that is not appropriate, then that will be dealt with in a separate manner. So, you know, I suppose the school and the teacher, it's managed like any other normal community or not any other educational establishment, where there's the board of management and there's the principal and there's the teachers and that, but definitely there's a great space for children to bring their ideas with them to the school, and they will be given time and space. The other thing is that with care as one of the core values of a community national school, the students in our schools know that if they need to talk to a trusted adult in our schools, that time and space will be made for that to happen. And that really that's one of the most important things in my particular school, and I know in Sorcha and Catherine, in all the community national schools, that element of care where the child can voice whatever is going on for them, and that they will be given the time and space to talk about whatever is going on. There's also times where the teachers and the SNEs might collaborate with the children. Say, for example, we did a Christmas show. It was one of our plays was Jack and the Beanstalk, and the script started as it was and ended up as something entirely different because there was so much collaboration and new ideas came in, and they were like, hang on, that doesn't make sense, let's figure it out. And new lines were put in, and the children owned their show. They owned the show. And the junior end, even they made up their own lines because they were like, hang on, why don't we say like the tired parents, you know, instead of something else? They made it their own, and there was space for that, which was wonderful. The other part is that it's integrated into our patrons program. We have a specific time called thinking time, and that's their chance to actually see what do they think and figure out how that integrates into their lives, and then we can explore it as a class, or I'll take it from there.
That's really good. That's the whole concept of thinking time, which is fabulous, isn't it? Picasso said that every child is born an artist, and the difficulty is to remain an artist as you grow older. And that's fabulous. There's another question as well, Moira, after coming in here, and I think it might be relevant for you. And the question is, it's an autonomous question, which is absolutely perfect. Have any of the schools grown since becoming a CNS? And I guess you might be able to share, I suppose, the story of Tahilla CNS on that one, Maura, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah. So the school in Tahilla, when I came to open the school as a caretaker principal initially, there were 7 of the original students starting that September. And there was another school locally that was a private initiative, and they needed a place to go, and the invitation was put out. And so then I was up to 12, and before I knew it, I was 14, and the following September I was 21. A huge element of that was, like Sorcha was saying, the bus. People were able to get the bus from Kenmare out to Tahilla. It's about 17 kilometres, I think, from Kenmare town, and it's 7.5 from Sneem then in the other direction. So we went from 7 to 21 in the space of 12 months. And then it has been gradual since then. We got a few Ukrainian children came to Kenmare, and they were able to get the bus out as well. And so we're up to 31 now at the moment. We had an all-time high of 34 before the summer, and we're stabilizing now at around the 30. So we're happy with that. We got 3 new students 2 weeks ago. So just after the Christmas break.
Well, congratulations on that, Maura, and all the team at Tahilla. The graph is going in the right direction anyway, which is wonderful to see. Yeah, thank you very much for your time and answering those questions, Maura. And we'll stay with Tahilla Community National School. Sinead Connolly is on the panel as well. Sinead, if I can bring you in, and good evening to you. Students get more time to question things, and I think Maura has been through this already, and she's mentioned thinking time, the things that are important to them and the things that matter. And a lot of the children now are masters of their own universe, and they're confident, and they're really good communicators, and they're really good thinkers as well, because they're surrounded from a range of media from such a young age, and they're no longer shy and retiring, and they'll tell you how they're feeling and what they're thinking. But students get more time to question things that are important to them and come, I suppose, to a more informed view in a community national school. Would that be true, do you think? And if it is, could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your introduction. And I suppose I will build a lot on what Maura had mentioned. It was a really interesting question that I was looking at about how pupils get more time to question things in CNS schools versus schools of different patronages. And I was really thinking about how this is true, and looking at my own classroom and the junior classroom as well in our school, I would say it's absolutely true. Pupils have ample time for discussing different topics, for debating different topics, and really engaging full on with the curriculum, I suppose, throughout all curricular areas, science, history, geography. But what really makes the CNS model stand out when it comes to giving pupils time to think is our patrons' curriculum. So our GMGY, and specifically thinking time. Just before Christmas, we had a training day with 2 Mile CNS, and we got an opportunity to learn a little bit more about our curriculum and how best to teach it and different methodologies. And I suppose one thing that stood out for me that I wanted to bring to today was the 4 thinking C's. So that's caring, collaborative, creative, and critical. So when we're thinking about different topics, are we thinking collaborative? Are we thinking as a group? Are we working together? Are we thinking creatively? Are we bringing dimensions or different areas that it could be true as well? And lastly, are we thinking critical? So maybe just to give an example of how this works practically in the classroom as well. Sometimes one of the methodologies I use in my classroom is a thinking circle. So we start off with a question such as, what is a leader? And what makes a good leader in a community? So I think sometimes if we're teaching history or geography, we might just go straight in and presume that the pupils have prior knowledge. But with GMGY, we really give time for the pupils to build on their understanding and listen, from other pupils as well, so they can build bridges and build on their own learning. So in a thinking circle, we pass a talking object around the circle, and each pupil has an opportunity to speak from their own experience. So you'll often find that each pupil has their own unique perspective, and it might be very different to the person sitting right next to them, even though they could be both in 4th class, they could be both boys, but they both might have completely different experiences based on maybe their own religion or their own cultural background. So in summary, I do believe that in CNS schools, we do have that foundation where pupils can, I suppose, come to their own informed views about the world around them. And yeah, I do believe it does happen in our school.
That's wonderful, Sinead. Thank you for that. And I love the way that it's coming through really strongly here about the embracing in the ways that we're all different, embracing not just diversity, but the many, many ways that we are very different, and getting young pupils and students to appreciate that. Sinead, thank you so much. And now we'll move back up towards Killarney. Pauline McCarthy is Deputy Principal at 2 Mile CNS, and Pauline joins us on the panel. Pauline, good evening. And I have a two-part question for you. And the first part is about what we call the GMGY, goodness me, goodness you, that Con referenced at the top of the presentation this evening. Would you be able to describe from a teacher's perspective what it's like to teach the GMGY patrons framework?
Good evening, John. Thank you. I suppose, first of all, I have to say that I really enjoy teaching GMGY. It's such a fun and refreshing curriculum. I suppose the main point of the curriculum that I just absolutely love is how inclusive it is. I have children in my class from a variety of different backgrounds and beliefs, and each child can fully participate in the curriculum. I have to kind of reaffirm what Sinead and Maura were saying about GMGY and the patrons curriculum. It really fosters an appreciation of beliefs that the children may not have themselves. Like I think they genuinely become able to appreciate other people's perspectives and beliefs. And as Sinead was talking about thinking time, the strand of thinking time is just fantastic. The children really get an opportunity to think outside the box, to think creatively. And I really love teaching and encouraging philosophical thought processes in the class. It's really rewarding.
Okay, and I have another question for you here, and this is a very direct question. It's about the type of training you received, and then beyond that, what resources are available to you as a teacher and as a deputy principal? Thanks,
Jen. I suppose before I started working in community schools at all, I attended a really good webinar. It was provided by the ETB, Kerry ETB. It really explained what GMGY was and how it fits in with the multi-denominational ethos in the schools. So that was a fantastic starting point. And then it's really fantastic to have a GMGY coordinator called to the school. Megan White called recently, and she taught a sample GMGY lesson. So it was actually really nice to just sit back and watch my class interact with GMGY from a different perspective outside of being the teacher. And I really took a lot from that. And as Sinead mentioned, we also called down to Tahala a couple of weeks ago to just discuss what methodologies we found really good for the different age groups. And it's just really good to collaborate with other teachers in community national schools and work together and kind of tease out ideas about what we find works best. So really this kind of before you start, there's really good support, and then it's ongoing as you continue your journey in the schools.
Pauline, that's great, and thank you, and lovely to talk to you on our information session this evening. Now, finally, we're going to get, there's a question or two here from the perspective of being a parent. And we are going to Scoil and Ghleanna, and Julianne McGillicuddy joins us in the panel this evening. She's a parent at Scoil and Ghleanna. Julianne, good evening. How are you?
Hi, John. How are you?
Thanks for joining us. And the question for you here is there's numerous questions coming in. It's about describing, from the perspective of being a parent, how religious difference is celebrated in a CNS.
Well, it's interesting because I suppose one of the most important things is for people to understand it's not non-denominational. And that was a question loads of people asked me when we chose Scoil and Ghleanna, is why we were choosing non-denominational. And it's not non, it's multi. And my kids regularly come home, and if I'm honest, they're educating me about loads of things. My oldest child had homework recently based on the Chinese New Year. They had lovely stuff home before Christmas on Diwali, the Rangoli. And if I'm honest, they were things I never learned about because a long time ago, when I was at primary school, we learned about our own religion. We only learned about Catholicism and we only learned about Christian beliefs. And it's really fostering in them, and like I see it in them, that they don't question the validity of other people's beliefs. And like we're a Catholic family, and my kids have all been christened. We had my oldest child made her first Holy Communion in Scoil, Ghleanna. They're about 18 or 19 months ago. So it's not at the expense of those traditions that we hold dear as a family and the things that we prioritize as parents. It's not at the expense of that, but they also get an appreciation of what other families prioritize and what other children learn about and the traditions. And it's not just from a religious perspective. And I suppose I'm repeating what Sorcha, what Maura, what Catherine have all said, that diversity is really to the forefront of what the kids learn. They learn to respect difference, to respect diversity. And I think maybe from my perspective, because I didn't grow up in a rural area and I now live in a very rural area, I think it's important, particularly for rural families, to get that diversity in education that they may not see on a day-to-day basis in their local community.
It's really, really well put, really eloquently put. And as you mentioned, it's not one or the other, it's both, it's all. And I think you are right.
It's also, sorry, John, it's also while my kids will have gotten and will get their sacraments, it's not at the expense of other kids' contact time in a classroom. There's no kids left to one side saying, well, we're going to do communion prep, or we're going to do first or confirmation prep. So will you go away and read a book? So they don't see that division. They see sacraments as something we do as a family. And then they see loads of other things that other families do. And they're curious about them, but there's no judgment, there's no criticism of it.
Well, that's very true. And I'm delighted to hear, Julianne, that I'm not alone in, I have 3 school-going children as well, and they educate me on a daily basis. And they tell me what I'm wrong on, and very rarely tell me what I'm right. It's getting harder as they get older. They're telling me I'm wrong about more things. Julianne, thank you for joining us this evening. And it was really, really good to get that perspective. Really, really well put. Now we'll move on to the last section of the information webinar. And this is a development of the Q&A. I suppose we had a good discussion so far, but these are further questions that we're going to be directing towards 2 other panelists that we have joining us this evening. One, as we've already mentioned, is Padraig and the second is Anna Dwyer. Padraig, of course, is a former Department Inspector of Primary Schools. He's Chair of the Board of Management in Community National Schools here in Kerry. And Anna Dwyer is our Director of Schools here at Kerry ETB. So welcome to you both, and thanks for joining us. Padraig, can I start with you? You are a former teacher and school inspector. You've got a very wide experience of educational leadership. And as I mentioned, you're currently chairperson of the Boards of Management at CNS Schools in Kerry. Can I ask you a very direct question? It's come in on a few different ways tonight as part of the session. What is your view of the CNS model from your experience, where you're coming from? What's your view of it?
Hi, John. Thank you. Well, my view is that the primary school is the most important local service for children and for families. And I think that what is not appreciated very often is that there are significant challenges for primary schools today, imposed by all sorts of new demands and pressures. Society has changed hugely, and schools have to do their best to respond to change and to meet increasingly insistent requirements of all kinds. Teaching and learning, of course, are at the heart of education, but there are many new concerns and responsibilities for schools, such as Catherine mentioned earlier on there, things such as child protection, special needs, new technology. In my view, schools need as much assistance as they can get to meet the challenges of a very rapidly changing world. For me, the CNS model offers major advantages for principals and for teachers. These are mostly of a practical nature and are accessed locally. And to take a few examples, you've heard them already, but we'll say, take, for example, information and communication technology a key part of educational infrastructure now. And that is something that has really only developed in the last, 20 years roughly. But people know it is essential for the school to keep up with the fast changing nature of these technologies. That's a very challenging requirement, I think, for citizens, but particularly for anyone who has to use these technologies for teaching and learning. Well, school principals in the CNS model have access to a range of expert advice and assistance to deliver safe and acceptable usage of ICT for teaching and for learning, and for the benefit of the children. Health and safety issues, school accommodation matters, maintenance, repairs, buildings, capital works, all of these things are looked after as part of the Education and Training Board arrangements for the network of schools and centres around Kerry. Human resource issues, financial matters, the provision of training, helpful support in dealing with the full range of educational issues, and especially collaboration with parents and partners in education. These are among the vital supports that are afforded to teachers and principals, and I should say also the boards of management within the ETB remit. A key part of the arrangement is that there is no isolation, but rather collaborative and supportive networks at the local level. These are some of the benefits and supports which CNS schools enjoy and which provide important assistance to enable schools to deliver excellence for children and for the communities that are served.
Okay, that's a really comprehensive and considered view, Padraig, and thank you for that. A question just in as well from John on the subject of autonomy. And the question is, how much autonomy does a principal really have in a community national school?
Well, I think that the autonomy of the principal is very much the same as in any school. For example, if there's an advertisement to be done for any new position in a school, the principal decides the advert and is on the interview board, for example. But the ETB will support the actual process of doing advertising and dealing with applications and so forth. So as I say, I think the autonomy of the principal is very much the same. But of course, in the model of the CNS, there is an engagement and a participation with the ETB network. And that's supportive and it's encouraging. And there is a sense it is a different arrangement, it is a different model of patronage, but a key feature is that it is very much in accord with all the agreed practice for the operation of schools and of education generally.
That's really well put across. And I think, Padraig, what's coming across is really very clearly tonight is that you have the autonomy, things are not different, but you have a lot more support. So that does, I call it economies of scale, or that sort of that support network around the environment which the school operates in is far more developed because of the size and the form of Kerry ETB and its experience as well. That's really interesting. Padraig, thank you for that. And Anne, if I could bring you in, I have a very practical question here, which came from something that Con Moynihan said earlier on about Lyra Crampon, and that they're joining the CNS family this September. Very practical question, Anne, and we dealt with it as well when we were speaking with the folks in Ballinskelligs. Will a bus run from Listowel to Lyra Crampon this September?
Okay, that's a very good question. And first of all, I just welcome Lyra Crampon, known locally as Lyra, to the family of Community National Schools. We're delighted to have them on board. Will a bus run? Well, you've heard the examples, especially from Sorcha earlier. All our 3 schools actually have buses, and right from the beginning they had buses, because once you have 10 parents interested, you can get a bus to the Community National School. And because it's the school of choice, as Sorcha alluded to earlier, it is the only school of choice, because there's only 3 Community National Schools in the county, and Lyra will be the only school of choice in that district. So, it might be from Listowel, or you might have Tralee. Lyra should look at Tralee from the other side either, because there isn't a Community National School in Tralee. And if there are 10 parents interested, the principal will certainly advise the parents to register on the school transport section of the Bus Éireann website. That will be open, I believe, around the end of February. And they will register their interest in getting school transport. And certainly in the other 3 schools, it happened fairly immediately. We had no difficulty getting 10 children. There were 10 families interested, and they're coming quite a distance. As you can see down in Tahila, they're travelling quite a distance from Kilmare, and with people travelling as far as Kilgarvan. And the bus, it is free for people who have medical cards. And you'd also actually, at the end of the year, the principals have advised me at the end of the year that, for example, if your collection point or drop-off point is not where the bus is passing, if you have to take your child to a collection point, you can also, families can avail of a grant for bringing their child, for transporting their child to that collection point as well. So that's another, I suppose, asset and another opportunity for parents. So I feel, there shouldn't be any great difficulty in getting 10 parents interested, and that's something we'll be promoting and informing parents. And it's one of the reasons we have these webinars as well, is to inform parents of what the possibilities are.
That's great, Anne. And I have another question as well here. If there's a school watching this information webinar right now, and they're interested in becoming a community national school and going on that journey, what should they do? What are the first steps?
Well, it's been mentioned earlier by Conan and by our colleagues around tonight. We're an ETB, we're a public body. All ETBs are public bodies, publicly funded and publicly managed. And we're obliged then, when people ask us for information, to provide them with information. So right throughout the years since community national schools were first established, we've been asked questions, and particularly since 2 Mile first transferred, we're often asked questions. We get emails, or we get expressions of interest on the ETBI website, where there's expressions of interest there for anyone in the country who's interested in exploring this model. So that's why we've started this series of webinars, to actually bring that information, because it is so new, and there are some significant differences to, we'll say, the traditional national school model. So if a school is interested, and I'll just give you an example of what has happened in the past. For example, Ghleanna is a good example, where members of the teaching staff and principal and members of the board of management approached us and asked us to come out and explain the model, because they were just considering it and they weren't sure. So we will do that. If any school is interested, we'd be very happy to meet them, either in Kerry ETB or meet them in their own school, and have that informal conversation, because they'll have got information here tonight, but they'll go away and they'll have other questions that they need to be answered, and they're not quite sure. They mightn't have picked up everything that they needed to pick up tonight. So that's something we're there to provide that information. And we've got huge support from ETBI, and it's been mentioned earlier, all the training that ETBI has provided for us as an ETB, and also for our schools as well. And ETBI have a very good community national school website where you have frequently asked questions, and certainly that would be good to do even before we meet, so that people can kind of read those and see what is clear and maybe what isn't clear. So after such a meeting, like when we went out to Ghleanna and we had that meeting, they went away and considered it, and then at that point they said, yes, we want to really look at this, we want to explore transferring. And you see, I suppose it is a facility there's agreement between the department and the different patron bodies that there can be early movers. And the 3 community national schools that currently have transferred in Kerry, all 3 that are here tonight, are in that category of early movers, and Lara Campon is as well. So if a school is interested, they then will talk to their own patron and say, yes, we're very interested in this and we'd like to have a public meeting about this. And because all the existing, we'll say, Catholic schools, and it may not be a Catholic school, it could be Church of Ireland school, but the existing schools operate on a parish structure. So usually the local parish with the school would organise a parish meeting, where everybody in the area would be interested in hearing, well, what is this about and what would be involved. So in Lara Campon last year and previously in Ghleanna and Tahila and in 2 Mile, we were invited out to those public meetings. And the ETB then will present again, like we did tonight, and give more detail to the local community. And at those meetings, you have parents, you have future parents, and you have grandparents, everybody who's a vested interest in the future of their school and the future of education in their community, asking questions, as well as the staff who are key stakeholders in this and the boards of management. And we usually talk, we'll say, for about 40 minutes. We answer every question that needs to be answered, because we probably have only one opportunity to do that. And at the end of that, we usually leave the meeting, public meeting, and we'll say in our Campán last year, the diocese would have facilitated that meeting, and they would have facilitated discussion afterwards, where the community make a decision whether they want to go with this or not. And it might involve further discussions, or they might make a decision there. And then after that, there's a whole process of transfer. We have a really very good relationship with the Kerry diocese in relation to the Catholic schools, where we meet at least 3 times, if not 4 times a year, where we have all the time on the agenda the transfer of our schools and how we actually manage that process and how we manage it collectively. So, you know, we're very happy with the relationship that we have with the Kerry diocese in particular, because the transfer of the 3 schools so far, and now this year, the transfer of Lara has been very, very, I suppose, seamless and, you know, very collaborative process on both sides.
That's great, Anne. That's a very detailed and considered answer, and there's lots of food for thought there. I guess the purpose of this information webinar is it's a conversation starter. It's the first step where people can consider what the options are. And thank you for that. And Padraig at the telephone, thank you as well. Con Moynihan, if I could call on you before we wrap, and we're running out of time, I'm going to call on you for 2 reasons. One is to, I guess, reiterate your contact details, Con, if you wouldn't mind, for people that are tuned in to us. Before you do that, though, final question from Alan about multi-denominational schools and chaplaincy support. So could you talk maybe a little bit about the chaplaincy supports that CNS schools would offer?
Thanks very much, John, and thanks for excellent facilitation of the night. It's been really a pleasure. I suppose, look, rather than a chaplaincy support around any particular individual faith, we have GUI and GUI support in terms of supporting what is then a multi-denominational and multi-faith approach. However, I suppose in terms of Anne mentioned the links with the diocese. Sacramental preparation is facilitated in each of the schools, not during school time, but after school, and that is I think, a very important part to support those students in the schools who want to receive either confirmation or communion or whatever. But I'd be happy to discuss that further, and that brings me to your first point, John. con.moynihan@kerryetb.ie. I'd be very happy to discuss that and any other matter. And thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight.
That's great, Con. Thank you. And I think we will leave it there because we've run out of time. We aim to keep it within the hour if we could. So just before we wrap up, I think it's important to say, and Anne has already mentioned this, that the successful transfer of the 3 CNS schools in Kerry, soon to be a 4th, of course, in September with Lyre, can be attributed to the positive relationship between Kerry ETB and the Diocese of Kerry. I think it's fair to say that both organisations have worked very closely together to ensure that all parties had full consultation, and that includes at all the levels, staff, parents, local communities. And this approach, and really I'm echoing Anne's point here, has facilitated not just an organised, but a pretty seamless transfer of patronage. So on behalf of Kerry ETB, I'd like to thank you for attending our information webinar this evening on the Community National School Model, for your interest and also for your questions. A reminder to you that a recording of this webinar will be available on the Kerry ETB website in the coming weeks. But for now, from all of us here, Berbua, August Benacht.